Hello, I'm Stephen Engel. Welcome to this Bloomberg Television special, a conversation with Carrie Lam, whose tumultuous single term as Hong Kong leader has come to an end. Her 5 years as Hong Kong chief executive were marred by mass street protests, largely targeting her, and a perception that Beijing was tightening its grip over this international city of 7.5 million. What followed was a clampdown on dissent. The imposition of a Chinese national security law did calm the violence, but it also led to the arrest of hundreds of pro-democracy supporters, and later, a total revamp of the electoral process to ensure only China patriots could serve as lawmakers. But her undoing may have been her pandemic response, which saw the healthcare system here overrun and more than 9,000 people, mostly the elderly and unvaccinated, dead. Not to mention her very controversial quarantine policies that essentially left this city isolated as the rest of the world moved on from COVID. Here is our candid conversation with Carrie Lam. Madam Chief Executive, thank you so much for your time and having us here in your offices here in Hong Kong.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So I was intrigued by a number of interviews that you've given over the last few days. One thing that you did catch my attention was how you felt that the Hong Kong is suffering as an international hub because of the quarantine issues. Why come out with that kind of sentiment now when there's really no chance for you to make a difference on that front?
Despite some skepticism and cynicism about Hong Kong's future, I remain very optimistic and confident of Hong Kong's future. And one of the reasons for my confidence and optimism is Hong Kong's unique strengths under one country, two systems. So I do want to conclude my term by reinstating the importance of Hong Kong's international connectivity and her status as an international city.
But is the damage already done?
Well, yes and no, because if you look at the past 2 years, that is before the fifth wave hit us, for a period, Hong Kong was ranked the world's #1 in terms of normalcy. That is when other countries and places were imposing the stay-home permits and lockdowns and closed the airport and so on. We were by and large operating normally. But since the fifth wave hit us, and it hit us very hard, particularly in terms of the number of deaths.
We went from 300 deaths
yeah, so we have to be
9,300.
extremely cautious. And at the same time, because of the transmissibility of Omicron and the mildness of this virus, then other places are opening up. So by comparison, I'm a person who believes in relativity. So everything is relative. When people are opening up, and Hong Kong is still imposing a 7-day designated hotel quarantine, that to a certain extent weakens our position as an international city. What I'm saying is Hong Kong's connectivity is very important for almost every sector. And I do hope that the next government, which has said that one of the top priorities is to resume some quarantine-free travel into the mainland. And that issue perhaps will need to be considered together with opening up to the rest of the world.
Is it feasible to open up internationally more first before the border with mainland?
Let's face it, it's not just a question of how the government sees the relative importance of opening up to the outside world and resuming quarantine travel in the mainland. It is our people's aspirations. The 7.4 million people, especially the business sector, which has a huge business operation in the mainland, and a lot of people who have family members in the mainland, and thousands of students supposedly should cross border every day to go to school. So the government has to take into account all these needs and aspirations and decide what to do. The best scenario is, of course, concurrent. We can adjust a bit the overseas travel restrictions, but at the same time without compromising or undermining the opportunity of resuming travel into the mainland.
In your discussions with mainland officials, and I know there was progress leading up before the fifth wave,
yes.
late last year,
yes.
we were getting closer.
Yes.
It was
Very close.
tantalizingly close.
Yes.
Obviously, Hong Kong has been pushing mainland authorities for their guidance and their approval. How much of a priority was it to mainland officials to open up the border?
To us?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, they certainly appreciate the importance of opening up the border to Hong Kong because of the very close relationship between Hong Kong and mainland in all respects. It's not just government to government, business to business, it's people to people. And the whole idea of the Greater Bay Area is to facilitate the free flow of people, capital, goods, and so on. So it's absolutely important. But what I'm telling you and the public is if that remained the prerequisite, that is zero local infections for a period of time, in the present circumstances with this prevailing Omicron, it would be very difficult.
I know you've said in previous interviews that you don't have any regrets as you leave the chief executive position. But are there things on the COVID front you would have done differently? Hindsight is golden, obviously. It's 2020.
Yes.
But in hindsight, is there something you wish you had done better?
Vaccination.
Vaccination. Vaccination. You wish?
We started a vaccination program February 2021. We are one of the places in the world that we have not for a single day is Hong Kong short of vaccines. And we have two choices of vaccines for people to choose. And we have community vaccination centers all over Hong Kong. With hindsight, perhaps we should be even more aggressive and forceful, short of mandating.
Why not a mandate?
Especially.
Why not?
We never do it by mandating people to take a jab, because that would be too interfering with the individual's freedom. But now we have a lot of outreaching teams to elderly homes. We persuaded the medical doctors to be more forthcoming in explaining to the elderly residents in the homes that it is okay for them to take the jab in order to overcome their vaccine hesitancy. We have said that unless this elderly resident's legal guardian said no, otherwise, by default, we will, based on medical advice, to vaccinate the elderly. These are tougher measures that were taken in the fifth wave, but not at the beginning of the vaccination program. So looking back, if you ask me, had we adopted the more aggressive measures at the very beginning and protect the elderly better, especially in the elderly homes, then perhaps we would see a lower number of deaths. This is critical. We probably have not seen the peak of this wave.
Can you take me back to February 22nd, I believe is when you came out and announced to the people of Hong Kong that they would likely have to face 3 COVID tests over the next month, and that those who test positive would be put into isolation centers. There were cases of parents being separated from the children. And then all of a sudden, you disappeared from public view for at least a couple of weeks. We came back and there was no lockdown, there was no mass testing. What happened during that period where the city was faced with a potential lockdown, mass testing, and 70,000 people that month, 70,000 people the following month left? People freaked out.
No, but Stephen...
I know you don't have regrets about policy, but clearly it could have been communicated better.
We are facing an unprecedented public health crisis. I don't think any leader in any government have a firm and clear work plan that is cast in stone. Public governance is about taking decisions, and sometimes tough decisions, in light of the changing circumstances. And changing circumstances is not an exact science. As I have said, in making all these difficult decisions in the last 2.5 years over COVID-19, I always have to strike the balance amongst the 3 key factors. One is public health, because it's life and death, okay? And I have a lot of experts telling me advice, and their advice is not entirely the same. No, I'm sure you pick up that.
That's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. And the second is, of course, the economic needs of Hong Kong. And thirdly is the people's tolerance. And if you look around, why many of the, or almost all of the other governments have opened up, I think they now realize that they could no longer tolerate the sort of isolation because of economic development needs, and that people are fatigued. Hong Kong people generally are much better, if you ask me. They're very disciplined, even up to this day. When Omicron is very mild, they still wear their masks whenever they go out, or even in other places. But still, making a decision on that sort of complicated interaction of several factors is not an easy one. And I do not shy away from making decisions. And I do not shy away from telling the people. And so difficult decisions have to be made, especially in light of Hong Kong's unique circumstances.
You still think it's going to be growth?
You have to look at the robustness in Hong Kong's various sectors to appreciate that this city will rebound, and will rebound very quickly.
How is the economy going to recover? You had 2 straight years of contraction, followed by last year's rebound. But this year, on this path, it does not look like it's going to be very good.
This year, we have moderated the forecast growth to 1% to 2%. Originally, it's much higher.
You still think it's going to be growth? Where are you going to get that? The borders are closed.
No, you just look at the retail, the trade, and the business. But the financial side is affected by the global geopolitical situation. So the IPO has come down, but at the same time, other things are doing well. For example, our green finance is doing extremely well. 2021, we have in Hong Kong issued 56.6 billion US dollar sustainable and green debt, which is 4 times more than the preceding year, 2020. So you have to look at the robustness in Hong Kong's various sectors to appreciate that this city will rebound, and will rebound very quickly.
I've been in Hong Kong a long time. My career, some 30 years in and out of Hong Kong, and there's never ever been a period that I've noticed that the authorities here even think about abandoning the dollar peg. But we're hearing that authorities and officials are at least discussing some of the contingency factors with the global situation, the geopolitical situation, and what even Paul Chan, your financial secretary, made mention of the Ukraine-Russia conflict raises, concerns, and that your authorities have to be prepared for anything. Eddie Yu at the HKMA talked about geopolitics and capital flows are going to be the biggest challenges to Hong Kong going forward. Is there any escalation of talk of contingency plans on the dollar peg if these concerns, geopolitical concerns, and U.S. so-called weaponization of the dollar escalate?
No, my personal view is there is no basis and no need to change the linking exchange rate system. It has served Hong Kong well and will continue to serve Hong Kong well. The reason why we have to make such a robust response is there's always speculations and rumors who try to exploit any uncertainty in order to sort of make profit or undermine Hong Kong's stability. But I think this one thing is very, very important, because when all over the world things are very fluid and even a bit chaotic, the certainty of Hong Kong's monetary system is important not only to Hong Kong, but to our country.
Do you see signs that the United States is weaponizing the dollar, or that there could be threats if there are further sanctions against Hong Kong, threats to Hong Kong's access to the SWIFT system, like we've seen in Russia and the like?
Well, some overseas governments are totally unpredictable, so I could not comment on that, and sometimes they are totally irrational. Up till this moment, I don't understand why, being a Hong Kong as a government official defending national security of the People's Republic of China, should be sanctioned by the US government. I just don't understand, except trying to bully and intimidate us for defending our own country.
Are you still paid in cash, or have you had your banking situation remedied?
I'm telling you, the one thing is I've not been spending money in the last 2 years without a credit card, but I can survive. I can survive.
How about after you step down? You will obviously be paid a pension.
Yes.
Will that be paid in cash?
Probably. I have only a very modest pension. Yes, it's a very modest pension because I left the government too early. Yes, because as a politically appointed official 15 years ago, I was no longer paid pension based on a civil servant's length of service. But never mind, as I have been saying, I have no property in Hong Kong, very little assets, but I enjoy serving the people of Hong Kong, and I'm sure I will enjoy my retirement.
Would you apply or find a way to apply to the United States to get off the sanctions list?
Definitely no.
No? Why not?
Definitely no. Why should I? I'm not keen to go to the United States. I have no assets in the United States. If my family members have been hurt, they have already been hurt, and they stand by me. So why should we go to apply for any relaxation of sanctions? I hope one day the U.S. authorities will realize that they have done something wrong, that they should rectify their own mistake.
Given that your term coincided with probably the most turmoil Hong Kong has ever seen these last 3 of the 5 years, I want to give you the final word. Is there anything you would like to apologize for to the Hong Kong people? I want to talk about the political situation in Hong Kong. Obviously, it's been through political upheaval.
Yes.
What is the path for societal and political reconciliation? Do you see one? Jasper Zhang, who's the founder of Hong Kong's largest pro-establishment party, recently called for dialogue to resume with the pan-democrats. And I'm sure you would answer that, well, if they are patriots and they abide by the new electoral laws, that they're welcome into the fold. But is there more that needs to be done to have a more inclusive political dialogue in Hong Kong? What needs to be done to heal that rift?
Well, it needs two to tango. What we are asking for is a recognition and adherence to one country, two systems. And as long as this prerequisite is accepted, there's of course room for dialogue, for cooperation. I practiced that, Stephen, for almost 2 years after taking office. I engaged across the political spectrum. I have personally displayed how to communicate and work together. I even adopted some of their policy proposals to the extent I was attacked and criticized by the establishment camp. But it turned out that, this is not it. They are against one country. They colluded with external forces to undermine the Hong Kong SL government and even endanger national security. But if they were willing to come back to the right track, which Hong Kong is now on, I'm very gratified that after these 5 years, Hong Kong is now on the right track of one country, two systems. Then there's always room. I'm sure every government official in the next government, in the next government, want a more inclusive society, want Hong Kong to be politically diverse, but don't deviate from the one country concept.
When are we going to get proof of this foreign interference, though? I've heard this a lot. And I don't represent any foreign government, but I'm just curious because I've heard government officials and yourself talk about, well, in Mandarin, it's 外国势力, foreign powers, and that's the boogeyman.
Yes.
Well, we're an international city. We're used to being international. So you said now, I think it was about a year ago, now is not the time to talk about the evidence or the proof. That will come out in the courts. But under the national security law, some of these court proceedings can be closed without juries or even on the mainland. So are we ever going to get this evidence of 外国势力 on the streets of Hong Kong that have impacted the city so much?
No, since the enactment of national security law, I was put on this very honored position to be the chairman of the National Security Committee. And I do learn a lot from my position as a chairman National Security Committee. And there are things that we could not prematurely disclose when we are still investigating or doing other things. But eventually, one has to appreciate, I don't think this has been understood and appreciated enough. The enactment of a national security law, especially on the implementation of this piece of national legislation, by itself is already a vote of confidence in one country, two systems. Because the entire legal provisions empower the Hong Kong authorities to implement. Investigations are done by the Hong Kong police force. Prosecutions are initiated by the Hong Kong SAR government lawyers in the Department of Justice, and ultimately, the cases are tried in the Hong Kong courts. And the Hong Kong courts, under the Basic Law, enjoy judicial independence, including the participation of the overseas distinguished judges.
My priority will be to heal the divide and to ease the frustrations and to unite our society.
Do you wish you had gone and sat down, though? You did come in as chief executive on a conciliatory tone. Yeah. Hong Kong was in the throes of the umbrella movement, and you did want to make overtures. Do you wish, and this is a question I've always had, wish you could have sat down with the kids or whomever was protesting and explained to them Article 18, Annex 3 in the Basic Law, which I've read countless times, and it clearly states if national security is threatened, if the emergency situation, the National People's Congress Standing Committee could do exactly what they did, and that is implement the national security law. But even in the months before that, in January of 2020, you said there's absolutely no truth to the rumors that Beijing is tightening its fist.
I still believe, and I still would say that it's not tightening the grip as presented by some Western media. It is exercising legitimate overall jurisdiction over Hong Kong under one country, two systems. Hong Kong is part of the People's Republic of China, enjoying a high degree of autonomy. But when you talk about kids and understanding of the Basic Law, this is one area that after reunification, we have not done well. And that's why we have done a lot recently, and I hope that the next government will continue to do, because understanding one country, two systems is not an easy thing. It is not a one lecture or an instant noodle type of education. And I'm very happy after retirement to help the understanding by going into schools and talking to young people, especially with my personal experience as a chief executive.
Is it an impossible task to manage two bosses, if you will, Beijing and the people of Hong Kong? Is it the most difficult job in politics? Your job, chief executive of Hong Kong?
I would say it is unprecedented and unique. I can't find many situations where the head of a government has two bosses. But if the aspirations and the goals of these two bosses could be aligned, one is right track, one country, two systems. Second, we all love to have stability, prosperity. And third, we could integrate Hong Kong, should integrate into the national development. Then the job of the chief executive suddenly becomes very easy.
Given that your term coincided with probably the most turmoil Hong Kong has ever seen, these last 3 of the 5 years, I want to give you the final word. Is there anything you would like to apologize for to the Hong Kong people?
No. I want to apologize to my husband and my sons for the sacrifices they have made to support my mission to serve the people of Hong Kong and to build Hong Kong as a part of the People's Republic of China.
Madam Lam, thank you so much for your time on Bloomberg Television.